Okay, welcome to another video. So one of my favourite Ubuntu-based distributions, Zorin OS, have just released a new version, bringing us up to version 16.1. So we'll read a little bit from the release announcement before we jump into the live environment and get this installed. So as we can see here, Zorin OS 16.1 is released and it's got humanitarian aid for Ukraine, and we'll go into a bit of that in just a moment. So today we're introducing Zorin OS 16.1, our most advanced operating system ever. It's packed with improvements to help you work better, updates to apps and system level software, and support for new hardware. However, this launch comes during a historically calamitous occasion affecting our family, friends, and all of the people of Ukraine. We want to take this opportunity to provide support and humanitarian aid to the ordinary citizens facing hardship in Ukraine and to the families fleeing violence. So what that means is all of the profits made from the sale of the Zorin OS Pro Edition over the next week will go towards humanitarian aid causes helping the people of Ukraine, and that'll be running until the 17th of March, and all of the profits will be split between these three charities. So if that's an issue that you're concerned about, this is a very good way of supporting. You get a cool Linux distribution and you also make a contribution to those charities. So with that out of the way, let's read what's new in this edition and jump straight into it and get this installed. So LibreOffice has been updated to help you work better. So we've got better compatibility with Microsoft Office documents, enhanced tracking of changes in text and tables, more options and features when editing documents, performance boosts when opening and editing documents, and visual improvements with more accessible icons in dark mode. And they do have a really nice streamlined aesthetic to the whole of their operating system. And we can see the nice sort of light and dark themes there, but we'll check all that out once we are fully installed. And then of course there's a whole host of applications installed out of the box that have all been updated to newer versions as well. And then we have stronger security and better hardware compatibility. Many built-in system technologies have seen improvements for better security, compatibility, and performance. Zorin OS 16.1 introduces new security patches out of the box, so you can have peace of mind knowing that you're using the most secure version of Zorin OS ever. In addition, there's even better support for hardware such as newer Nvidia graphics cards, including the RTX 3050, framework laptops, that's pretty cool to see, the Apple Magic Mouse, and then we have Sony PlayStation 5 DualSense controller, very cool as well. And then we have the Intel Core 12th generation family of processors, and then the Epson, HP, Canon, and just some other printers there. And then we have more Wi-Fi and audio hardware. Now this release will continue to be supported with software updates and security patches up until April 2025. So the edition we're going to be checking out today is their Pro version, but you get a lot of the same cool features in the Core and Lite editions as well. And here we can see some of the features included in the Pro that aren't in the Core or Lite editions. And probably my favourite features of the sort of premium Pro edition is the new desktop layouts. Now with that out of the way, let's jump into the live environment and get this installed. It is a very pretty looking desktop, but we'll save all that for once we're installed and booting off disk. Now as usual, we are going to be installing this natively, but for those of you who like to skip the installation part of this video, there'll be timestamps down below which will take you straight to the installed desktop. So the installation process should feel pretty familiar to anyone who's installed an Ubuntu or Ubuntu based distribution. First up, we're going to choose our language of English and go to the next step. Okay, next up we need to choose our keyboard layout, which for me is going to be English UK. And then we'll use the box here to make sure the keyboard is working as it should, and then we'll go to the next step. Alright, so we can either do a normal installation, which will include sort of all of your additional web browser utilities and all of that good stuff. And as we are using the Pro Edition, we'll probably stick to the normal installation, but we could also go for a minimal installation to get a bit more of a bare bones distribution. Now we are going to go ahead and download updates and install third-party software, but we're not going to participate in the census, and it is good that it's sort of disabled by default and you have to sort of opt in. Next. Now for the installation type, we're just going to go for a straight erase disk and install Zorin OS, and if I remember correctly, they pretty much just follow the standard Ubuntu partition scheme. So we'll get an ext4 root partition, and I do believe it uses a swap file as opposed to a partition, but we'll check all that out once we are fully installed. So we're just going to press continue. And we're going to go ahead and choose the drive that we're going to be installing on, and then we're going to press install now. And we can see there we've got two partitions for the ESP and then one for your root partition of ext4, which does pretty much mean we're going to have a swap file as opposed to a swap partition. Continue. Where are you? London is close enough, and we'll go to the next step, which is going to be our user account. So let's call this one Zorin. Type in a password, and we are going to log in automatically, and that should be everything. Perfect, so I'll pause the video here and come back once it's finished. And there we go, installation has complete without any issues whatsoever and was done in just under 10 minutes on my machine. Let's reboot and check out our freshly installed Zorin OS 16.1. Alright, so here we are, and the first thing you're going to be greeted with after a fresh install is the Zorin OS welcome screen. Now we will very quickly run through it, but I don't think much has really changed here from the previous version of Zorin OS that we checked out on the channel. So let's press Start Tour. So first up, open the menu to launch apps. So they have a nice little application menu here, but it's not bound by your left super by default, but I do believe that's quite easily changed in their settings. Next. So choose your desktop look with Zorin OS appearance, and of course we're using the Pro Edition, so we'll have loads of additional appearances and we'll go through some of them as well, but we'll leave that for the moment and go to the next step, which is where we can connect our online accounts. Next. So we can also link our phone with Zorin Connect, and it's kind of a bit like sort of KDE Connect, and you can sort of sync your Android notifications and all of that good stuff. And next. So use software to find and install apps, and I think the software store, if I remember correctly, is out of the box integrated with FlatHub, so we'll check that out. And then we have Office Suite for Work, so we can choose the Office Suite that works best with the documents you use. Both Office Suites are compatible with Microsoft Office documents and other formats. Now, as we've got their sort of newly updated version of LibreOffice, and it sort of integrates nicely with their own desktop themes, we'll stick with LibreOffice, but we do have the option there of only Office straight from the welcome screen as well. Okay, that's everything. Let's get into it. Right, so we've got some updates to grab, so let's go ahead and install them now. And then while it's doing that, we're going to jump into the About page and we can see the version of things that we are using. So we can see here that the windowing system is still using X11 by default. I don't think we can see the kernel version, so let's open up a terminal and type in uname-a, and we can see that we are using the Linux kernel of 5.13.0-35. And as this is based on the sort of long-term release of Ubuntu, so Fosser, I do believe you're going to be using an older version of GNOME, so sort of pre-GNOME 40, but it doesn't matter too much from Zorin with their own sort of desktop modifications. Everything still feels nice, fresh and modern. And if you're on the laptop, you'll still be able to use their sort of touchpad gestures and all of that good stuff as well. Installed HTOP and done a quick reboot so we can see how much RAM we're using on a fresh boot before we make any changes to our system. Now, as you can see here, it's not the lightest ever at over 900 MB, around about 922. Bearing in mind, this is the Pro Edition featuring the GNOME desktop, which comes with a lot of modifications and applications installed out of the box. I'd probably imagine their core edition, so the free version, might even be a little bit lower than that, but towards the end of the video, we are going to compare that number to their Lite edition featuring XFCE. Now we can see just beneath that it has indeed created us a swap file by default of 2 GB. Right, now that we've got all of that out of the way, let's start poking around on the desktop. I'm actually quite a big fan of the default look and feel that they go for here with a single panel layout. So let's have a little look at how it's all been set up. So we've got our clock here, so we can click that and then it'll pop open things like our notifications, and we can see we've got some updates there. And then we have the do not disturb as well as the calendar. And then we have our things like our sound settings and all of that good stuff. And then here we have some pinned applications. So as you can see, from a right click, we can remove from favorites or open a new window of a certain application. And then we have our Zorin menu. Now, if we right click on the taskbar itself, we can go to lock taskbar or go to taskbar settings, and we can also jump straight into it with Zorin appearance. So if we go into the taskbar settings, here it's going to be a little bit like dash to panel, so we can do some things like move things around, change the size of things. And if you're someone who likes the sort of Windows-esque, Windows 11 kind of aesthetic, you can also move your taskbar to center it on your monitor there, and then you'll have your sort of pinned applications in the middle like they do on Windows 11. However, they do have their own Windows sort of layouts included, so you might not even want to do that. Now let's move that back to its default position, which is stacked to the left. And now let's close that off for now, but of course we do also have behavior and action. Now from here we can also right click and then get into Zorin appearance. And here is where we can see all of the nice different Zorin layouts, which we'll go through in just a moment. And then we have the different sort of theming here, which is quite nice with the accent colours. So just a quick and easy click to change the accent colours. So you can see right now on the sort of light bluish colour there. If you wanted to swap it over to orange, it's as simple as that. And it's equally as simple to change our background to the nice dark theme. And as you can see, all of the sort of paneling system has a nice bit of transparency. Now let's open up an application and see what that looks like with the dark theme there. See, I already like that. I'm more of a dark theme kind of guy, but for these videos I often find it works a little bit better with the light theme when it comes to actually viewing it on YouTube. So I'll leave it on the light view for now, but we will test out a couple of different applications, mainly LibreOffice because they've got the new version and I want to see what it looks like with the dark and light themes. And then we can jump into other and make some sort of manual customizations here for applications, icons and shell. We'll then have interface, so we can change the position of the title bar buttons from right to left, like so. And then we also have enable animations, and then we have jelly mode, which was introduced in Zorin OS 16. And what that will do is then make it sort of almost like a wobbly window kind of effect when you move your windows around. Not something that I'm a massive fan of, so I'll leave that disabled. And here is where I mentioned earlier about the easy changing of the left super key. So at the moment, it opens up the old sort of GNOME free kind of overview with your workspaces to the right here. But if you'd rather have it open up the Zorin menu, it's a very simple little change there. And now the left super is going to go straight into it and open up your application menu, which we'll go through in just a moment. So personally, I'll probably leave it on there. So on GNOME 40, I would leave it just to open the overview as it sort of usually would. But on here, I think it works quite nicely with the Zorin menu instead. Now, I'm not a huge fan of hot corners, never have been, but for those of you that do like your hot corners, you can then go ahead and swing your sort of mouse cursor to the top left to then activate the overview hot corner. Whereas with it disabled, you won't accidentally go ahead and trigger it. So it's cool that it is disabled out of the box. And then here as well, we can get straight back into it with the Zorin taskbar settings, which we've done when we've done a right click. Okay. That's pretty much everything there in interface. I don't think there's too much new stuff introduced there. Now it does have desktop icon support. So as you can see there, we can bang in a new folder like so. And there we go. So that should work as you would expect most desktop icons to work. Not really a huge user of desktop icons myself. I like to have a nice clear canvas on the desktop, but it's there for you, for those of you that do. I'm going to go ahead and disable that entirely. And then fonts wise, we are using for the interface text into regular, document sans regular. For the monospace, JetBrains, not my sort of favourite font, but easily changed. And then for legacy window titles, we are using Intel Bold. Now, as that's pretty much everything in Zorin appearance, let's go ahead and show you some of the nice themes that are included out of the box. So if we scroll down, we can see we've got, about 8 or so different ones here. So this is the first one, which I think is pretty much the default that we are currently on. And as you'll notice here, we do have the multitasking button, which will do the same as what opening up the overview does. So if you do change your left super to your applications menu, like I have, you still have a nice easy way of getting into it with a single click on your taskbar. We then have this little one here, which is more of an old school kind of Windows-esque kind of layout. So you get the full tooltips for the application window there. And it's made things look a little bit smaller. And now if we open up the application menu, that appears to be pretty much the same as it was beforehand. And I think for the most part, that's all that has really changed here. And now if we right click on it, we can see that we can just quit, show details, add to favorites, new window and Zorin appearance are pretty much the same behavior there as well. And now we have this one. So this is the Windows sort of 11 kind of layout. So what that's basically done is just moved your taskbar into the center like I showed you with the previous way of doing it in the taskbar settings. And we can see it's changed the look of a few things here now. So we have a show applications button. And what this is going to do is go into the old sort of application dashboard that you used to get with GNOME sort of 3.3 recurring until GNOME 40. And we can see we have a whole load of applications that we'll go through in just a moment as well. And then we still have the same multitasking button. And then we've got what looks to be kind of a GNOME sort of free classic-y kind of thing there. So all we've not got now is a top bar, so we have no dash anywhere on the screen. But now if we open up our application overview, as you can see now, left super is now going to go ahead into your overview and you're going to find your dash on the left, and then you have the show applications button there as well. Now I wonder if it does indeed. So it still uses the standard GNOME shortcuts for getting into your applications. So if you hold the left super and then press A, you can bypass all of that and get straight into your sort of full screen application view like so. And then of course that's centered your clock with your power and sort of action buttons to the right. And then again, we still have the same sort of vertical workspaces there on the right hand side. Okay, and then we have what looks to be a nice little macOS kind of theme, and it's got a nice little floating dock here. And again, we've got an applications button like so, but I do believe we also have a nice little slimmed down menu here, which is basically going to get you to things like your home folders, as well as software settings or an appearance. And then we have the action buttons there as well. Actually quite like the way it's done that there. And then of course it's moved all of your sort of notifications and all of that good stuff to the top right. And now we have the sort of real sort of Windows 11 kind of layout now. So that should have changed our actual application menu. There we go. So that's meant to mirror the kind of look and feel that you'll get from a standard Windows 11 install. So again, it's moved everything to the center now, not just the actual task box or the task manager. So we also have the multitasking view there, as well as all of our pinned applications. And like I said, we have a different kind of menu now. And I wonder if that's bound to the left super key. It has bound to the left super key. Perfect. I actually do quite like this sort of layout. My favorite one is coming next though. So here we have what's kind of what I'd call a Unity-like inspired layout. And it's the same sort of thing that Ubuntu's gone for with their sort of standard GNOME version once they transitioned over from Unity. It's kind of like a remnant left over from Unity with a sort of left two paneling kind of system here. So here we're going to have our favorited applications, and again we're going to have the show applications button, which is going to go into the full screen application launcher. And now that has moved our multitasking buttons here. And now if we full screen an application, and let's see what that looks like in this theme. There we go. See, I do quite like the way that looks there, and once more you still get the nice transparency effect on the left, so it's showing a little bit of the wallpaper coming through there. Nice. Okay, and then last up we have this bad boy right here, which isn't too different from the one we checked out around here, so let's see what's different. Okay, so all that appears to be different insofar as the other layout with this kind of layout is it's changed the kind of menu, so it's slimmed things down again, and all we've now got is the categories. I do quite like that with the nice rounded corners as well, and then clicking into the categories will then open up all of the applications inside that category in the same sized window. Not bad, I do quite like that. And then again we've got the full sort of window application title bar in the application itself. Okay, I think what we'll do then for the rest of the video, I think we'll stick with the macOS kind of layout, because these are my sort of preferred kind of layouts on my own systems. I like having a dock and a panel. If possible, I'd like to have a global menu here, but I don't think that's going to be possible on this distribution, at least at the moment. So that's all of the different Zorin OS appearances, and I do think it's very cool that they are included in the Pro Edition. Over on the Core Edition, you don't get quite as much choice, but there are still a couple of different layouts that you can choose from. Now that should be set to auto hide or intelligently hide out of the box. It is indeed. Now, for the most part, the way it's going to be sort of changing these layouts is going to be using GNOME extensions. So if we go into our application menu, I keep forgetting we've changed it, and what we're going to do is see if we do have the extensions installed out of the box. We don't. Do we have tweaks? We don't. So what I'm going to do is quickly install GNOME tweaks or maybe extensions, and then we can see what actual extensions we've got to sort of get all of these different desktop layouts working, as well as what other ones they've included out of the box. Right, so now that we've gone ahead and installed GNOME tweaks as well as the extension package, we can then go and open the extensions to show you everything that they've included and the modifications they've made to give you this nice desktop look and feel out of the box. So we're just going to type in extensions. Now there's going to be a lot, because they do quite a lot of modifications to the desktop. So we have applications menu, the auto move windows, we have hide activities and move clock. And then we have horizontal workspaces. So although they're still using a sort of pre-GNOME 40 version of GNOME, it doesn't mean you have to miss out on some of the features that GNOME 40 did bring with it. And that's one of the cool things about the Zorin OS. They do sort of include a lot of the newer features before they made it to newer versions of GNOME. So at the moment, we are using the sort of old school workspaces like so, using Control-Alt up or down. We can now go through our different workspaces. But if, like me, you actually prefer horizontal workspaces because it just feels more natural, you can then just go ahead and enable that. And now using the same keyboard controls of Control-Alt, but this time left and right as opposed to up and down, you can see that it's got the keyboard shortcuts all ready to go, so you don't have to play around with things. And that's going to go ahead and switch you from vertical to horizontal workspaces. And I'm actually going to leave it on horizontal. We then have Launch New Instance, Native Window Placement, Places status indicator, we have the remove drive menu, we have remove drop down arrows, we have screenshot window sizer, user themes, window list, window and navigator, workspace indicator, and in here we have the X11 gestures. So in Zorin OS 16 they introduced the gestures, so if you're using a laptop or a touchpad, it doesn't mean that you sort of miss out on the kind of GNOME 40 Wayland gestures. So when we checked out the Zorin OS 16, we tested this out on the laptop, and using a series of sort of pinches and finger swipes, you can move across your different desktops and jump into your overview, and that all worked absolutely fine. So again, just another cool thing that they decided to include despite not having that functionality baked into it. And obviously you're going to miss out if you're not using GNOME 40, so that they've included that for you, so you still get all of the goodness like so. We then have Zorin app indicators, Zorin Connect, Zorin Dash, Zorin desktop icons, and we have the Zorin magic lamp effect. So I'm not a huge fan of these kind of effects, but for those of you that come from macOS, I think they call it the genie effect. What it does is when you minimize an application, it kind of sort of shrinks down into its own little icon. So at the moment, we're going to have the standard animation when you minimize an application's window. But if we went ahead and enabled the magic lamp effect, you'll watch now it's going to have the sort of genie kind of effect where it shrinks down. And then if you sort of restore it, it's going to do the same thing, but in reverse. So I'm going to leave that disabled, but it's cool that they do have that option there as well. We then have our Zorin menu, Zorin printers, Zorin taskbar, and the Zorin window move effect. So like I said, a lot of cool modifications baked into their sort of base installation to give you a lot of the cool things that you miss out on newer versions of the GNOME desktop. So very cool that they went ahead and did that. Right, now that we've got all of that out of the way, what I want to do is just go through some of the applications as we are using the Pro Edition. It's going to be quite a lot here, but we won't go through everything because like I said in my Zorin OS 16 video, we sort of spent a bit more time on that, and I'll link that if you want to watch that one as well, but we'll have a quick run through anyway. So we'll do it in the dashboard view. So we have Solitaire, Ardor 6, we have Audacity, Barrier, Blanket, Blender, Brasero, Break Timer, we have a standard calendar, we have Cheese for webcam, we have clocks, we have our color picker, we have Contacts, Darktable, Evolution is your default email client, and it's probably my favorite email client when I'm using a GNOME desktop, and I find it integrates very well with the GNOME online accounts. We have feeds, we have Nautilus as our file manager, our default web browser is going to be Firefox. Got a firewall configuration, we've got Foliate, which I do believe is like an ebook viewer, reader. FreeCAD, we then have GIMP, Handbrake for sort of encoding and converting video files and all of that good stuff. Homebank, HTOP we installed ourselves. We then have Inkscape, and Kdenlive is also included out of the box. Very nice icon theme as well that we're using. Kuha, Critter. And then we have the full LibreOffice suite, and we have got a new updated version, so we will go ahead and open that and see what it looks like with the different themes. So I do believe they've done quite a bit of work with the dark theme to make sure that the buttons are very nice and viewable, and it's using this kind of layout here to give you a bit more of a Windows kind of look to your Office program. So this is it in the light view. Let's go ahead and switch over now to Zorin Appearance so we can open up the dark theme. So we're going to go back into theme. Click this bad boy button right here, and of course we can schedule it as well with this button. So I think we might have to close it and reopen it for it to fully take effect there. So let's just do that once more, and we're going to go ahead and open up Writer and just see what it looks like now with the dark theme enabled. There we go. So I do actually quite like the way that all of the icons do pop and you can read them properly. I have noticed in some dark themes of LibreOffice it just doesn't gel very well and you can't always make out exactly what the buttons are there. And as we are using an Ubuntu based distribution, I'm pretty much sure it's packaged all of the dictionary support out of the box. So it should do automatic spell checking with the correct dictionary language without any issues. And as you can see there, it has indeed picked up the correct dictionary. And it's small things like that that you don't think of, but you will notice a lot of distributions out there don't actually, set all that up for you. So you have to go and actually get the correct dictionaries to make sure that the spell checking is working. And then what else have we got? Like I said, we're not going to go through all of this, but we then have Minds, Minx, OBS Studio. So this is also a very good distribution for kind of like content creators because it's going to have a lot of the applications, at least I use to make videos out of the box. So Kdenlive, OBS, GIMP, and I'm pretty much good to go. Also got Pitivi there, a few more games. We've got the remote desktop. We have Rhythmbox, which is probably my least favorite music player, so I wouldn't mind if they switched that out for something else, but we do have Rhythmbox there included. Now, like I said, we're not going to go through everything, but it does also include VirtualBox out of the box as well. So for gaming, I don't think it does include Steam, but that's easy enough to install. And what we're going to do now is jump into the software, because I'm pretty sure in 16 they did introduce the FlatHub integration, but we'll just double check that now. So here is mainly where you're going to do all of your GUI sort of application installations and all of that good stuff. So we do have some updates to get, so this is for the KDE platform, so I'll quickly grab that, pause the video, and then we'll come back. Right, so we're all up to date and we should be good to go. So before we start taking a look, we're going to open up a terminal and see if we do have the Flatpak enabled out of the box. I'm pretty sure that we do, so let's just type in Flatpak and list. Oh, okay, yeah, so I completely forgot. A lot of the sort of additional applications that are included in this Pro version are actually Flatpaks, which I think is quite a good idea. So let's see exactly what we are using. So we've got things like OBS, KDE. Okay, brilliant. So it's got most of the applications that we're going to be using as opposed to the core applications for the distribution, and they're distributed as Flatpaks, which is quite a good idea because it means they're always going to be pretty much up to date insofar as the FlatHub versions are. And as we can see there as well, it does have all of the Zorin theming as Flatpaks, so that does mean that all of our applications should look nice and not out of place on our desktop out of the box. So let's just quickly open up a Flatpak of Kdenlive and just see how that's going to look integrated within the rest of our desktop. Bang, and there we go. Yeah, I completely forgot that they did that. That's a very cool. Right, let's close that off. So we know that we've got the FlatHub repository all enabled out of the box. So all we'd really need to do if we want to install an application, no matter where we're getting it from, is just go ahead and search for something. So let's say you wanted Chromium, and then as you can see here, we've got all of the options here. So we have ungoogled Chromium, and now if we scroll all the way down, we can see that that is indeed using the source of FlatHub. Okay, cool. So I think what I want to do, because what's cool about the Pro Edition is it also includes the Lite Pro Edition, which features the XFCE desktop as opposed to GNOME, and that will run better on lower end hardware. Now I've got the XFCE edition installing on the laptop, so we'll jump over to that and have a very brief couple of minutes running over that, and then we'll start to wrap things up. Right, so here we are on their Pro Lite edition. Now they've done a really good job of mirroring the kind of look and feel that on the desktop that you get on the standard, core and Pro editions that you do get on their Lite edition, because of course we're now using XFCE as opposed to the GNOME desktop, which is a lot more lightweight and will run better on lower end hardware. So no matter what your kind of hardware requirements are, you can still get that Zorin OS kind of look and feel out of the box. And it is really good that they've got the two versions there for all people that might want to use it. Now, for the most part, you won't really notice that too much is really different until you start digging into the settings and the XFCE specific stuff. But for the most part, everything should behave quite similar. So you'll notice we've got the same kind of single panel layout by default, but it does also include some of its own desktop layouts, but not as much as you will find on the Pro Edition with the GNOME desktop. We'll very briefly go through them in just a moment though. So as we can see here, if we go to panel preferences, they've done something cool with the taskbar here. So as you can see, we have a nice little plugin of the dock-like taskbar. This way, you can still pin your applications as you would on sort of a dash to panel or Zorin kind of panel, and it will behave pretty much similar to what you'd expect on the standard version of Zorin Pro. So that's really cool to see. Now, as you'll notice, we currently only have the one panel, and what's quite cool with the sort of utilization of the dock-like taskbar, when you go into the different Zorin OS kind of appearances, so if you go for a Mac OS kind of feel with a panel at the top and a dock at the bottom like so, to keep things even more lightweight, it's not going to be using a dock-like plank to get this dock at the bottom here. It is instead just going to create you a nice new panel, but then move the actual items for the, let me just go into panel 1, for the dock-like taskbar down at the bottom. And as you can see there, we now have the Zorin App Grid Lite, and that is going to be a full screen app grid with a bit of transparency so you can still see what's going on underneath. And as you can see, as we are using the Pro, we're still going to have all of those additional Flatpaks and other applications included out of the box. So like I said, for the most part, you shouldn't really notice too much different on a surface level until you dig a bit deeper. So for example, we've got the panel preferences here, which will sort of instantly let you know that you are indeed running XFCE. Now let's just go on to the first panel and see if there's anything else in there that might be interesting to take a look at. No. Right, let's quickly see what the dark theme looks like in this macOS kind of feel. Nice. Actually, I do think I saw that it's also got the app menu plugin. Ah, we do indeed. So that's quite cool. So with certain applications, not all of them will work, especially like GNOME specific applications, but with some, that will now give us kind of like a global menu. So let's try it with Kdenlive and see if it works with Kdenlive, the Flatpak application out of the box, to give us all of the settings in our top bar. And there you go. Would you look at that? We now have all of our settings accessible from our top panel there, and that is using the app menu plugin. So I really like that. That's very cool to see. Now we'll do one more little desktop layout before we do a quick reboot, see how much RAM we're using before we wrap things up. So we're going to check out one more. So we'll go for their sort of Windows 11-y kind of layout here. So it doesn't appear to have centered that properly, unfortunately, but that might be because I'm using like 2 displays, 1 capture card, and it's probably just thrown things around a little bit. I'll confirm that towards the end off camera and see if it has done it properly and centered it without any issues. And again, it's still going to give you the full screen application dashboard. Okay, we'll go back onto the default sort of desktop layout and theme for now. We'll do a quick reboot, see how much RAM we're using, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay, and we are back, and as you can see there from the output of HTOP, the Pro Edition is quite substantially lighter than the GNOME Edition, using just under 700 MB at 692 MB on a fresh startup. Right, so that's where I'm going to wrap up with my refresh look of Zorin OS, at this time featuring the newest edition of 16.1. Now, for those of you who have never used Zorin and aren't super familiar with it, I'll also leave a link in the description below to my previous video where I'll show you some of the new features that were introduced in just 16 as well, because there's a lot there to go over. All in all though, I've always been quite a big fan of Zorin OS, and I think this update just further cements themselves as one of the better Ubuntu-based distributions out there. And that goes for all of their versions, whether you're using the Pro Edition or the Core. Of course, on the Core Edition, there'll be a few additional extra cool little bonus tweaks that you do miss out on, but it's still a very good distribution. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. And if you've really enjoyed it, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. Join the Discord, there's a link in the description below, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.